Good morning. This is Jimmy, and it's Thursday morning. Hope you had fun at church last night. We're in chapter 8 of the book of the prophet Zechariah. Chapter 8. Yesterday, we continued, and we've gotten up through verse 5. I'm very grateful for every one of you. I hope that some of the excitement about the election will go away. I would encourage you not to be bitter if you are, and to not be arrogant if you are, because neither trait will get you anywhere. But a humble and a contrite spirit the Lord will not despise. He won't turn you away. Always remember that we are sinners saved by grace, and that we all deserve hell. And Jesus granted some of us eternal life when we knelt at the foot of the cross and let him judge us. And he was made to be sin for us who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. So put your faith and your trust in Christ, and if any of us is going to glory, let him glory in the Lord and get on with the work at hand. As I told you yesterday, we're not in danger of being jailed for the present time. So we need to keep pressing the claims of Christ. Let us work while it is yet day, for the night cometh when no man may work. We need to work now. Remember what he said, my Father worketh hitherto, and I worketh. He said, occupy until I come. That means keep busy, keep working. Don't give up. So, now that we have our liberty assured, as so far as man can assure that liberty, let us proceed to win disciples to Jesus Christ and to disciple those converts in the ways of the Lord as best we can. And so that when we are dead, when they do finally come for us and jail us and kill us, that there will be people that we left behind who know what to do and can take charge of the flock of God and care for it. Remember, always be teaching somebody else to do your job. I'm having a little trouble this morning because everything's kind of out of focus. I don't know why, but we won't worry about it. We'll do the best we can. Chapter 8 of the book of Zechariah, beginning in verse 1. Again the word of the Lord of hosts came to me, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I was jealous for Zion with great jealousy, and I was jealous for her with great fury. Thus saith the Lord, I am returned unto Zion, and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem shall be called a city of truth, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts, the holy mountain. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, there shall yet old men and old women dwell in the streets of Jordan. On this side, Jordan, on the streets of Jerusalem. Told you my eyes were a little wonky. There's nothing wrong with the print. There's nothing wrong with my glasses. It's just the way I'm seeing things today. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, there shall yet old men and old women dwell in the streets of Jerusalem. and every man with his staff in his hand for very age. And the streets of the city shall be full of boys and girls, playing in the streets thereof. We get up to where we are now. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, if it be marvelous, or if you think it's hard to do, if it be marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of this people in those days. I'm going to come back and talk about this in a minute. Should it also be marvelous in mine eyes, saith the Lord of hosts? Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will save my people from the east country and from the west country. From the east country and from the west country. Good morning, Chris and or Julie. And I will bring them, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God in truth and in righteousness. Well, Israel is in Jerusalem. They're there. God is in the midst of them. They are his people, but they are not there in truth and in righteousness. They're there in unbelief. But this leads us to a prophecy, I believe, that is in the process of being fulfilled now. And the key to it, first let's talk about this remnant, and then I'll talk about the details. In verse 6, the remnant of these people in those days, God always leaves a remnant. In verse 12 of the same chapter 8, for the seed shall be prosperous, the vine shall give her fruit, and the ground shall give her increase, and the heavens shall give their dew. And I will cause the remnant of this people to possess all these things. Well, they do possess them now, but remember the remnant in the far sense of the prophecy. The remnant is the third of the Jews that God miraculously preserves through the last 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation, and supernaturally protects them. That is the remnant. Now, it says down here that I will save my people from the east country. Well, was to the north, but Babylon pressed from the east, of course. They entered from the east. They crossed the Jordan River. They went through Syria. They usually went north and down so that they wouldn't have to cross the great Arabian desert. And so they needed to stay where they could have water along the way. If you've ever watched Lawrence of Arabia, you know how difficult that can be. You can see it in plain sight. I think they filmed most of that in Tunisia or somewhere like that. But I'll save my people from the east country and from the west country. Well, the only people to the west of Israel and the south and the southwest corner were the Philistines. At this time in the past, when Zechariah writes this, the Babylonians have completely subjugated the Philistines. There is no Philistia left. As a matter of fact, when Hadrian destroys Jerusalem in 125 AD and really destroys it, and turns every stone over, plows it under, and takes every Jew out of the land so that they would never rebel again, he named Judea Palestina, which is Latin for Palestine, Latin for the Philistia, the Philistines. The Palestinians are the modern Philistines. And they lived to the west of the nation. Their cities were Ashkelon and Ekron and Ashdod and Gath. They lived along the coast. They were linguistically and hereditarily linked to the Phoenicians, the great Phoenician seafaring. They were a sea people. The Philistines were referred to also as the people of the sea. Now, in modern Israel, you look on the west, and it's all Israel until 2004 when they gave the Palestinian Authority, which the southern branch became Hamas, a little area called the Gaza Strip, or Gaza. And it's very small, and it doesn't cover the area that ancient Philistia did. Ancient Philistia began at the not far south of Tyre and Sidon, and Israel had a kind of limited coastal area around what became Caesarea Philippi. During Zechariah's day, the Caesarea Philippi had not been built yet, but that was the great port city that belonged to ancient Israel and then Roman Judea. I'm sorry, there's something, my eyes are just not focusing today. So we will bear with it because I have this stuff in my head. I can remember. Uh, so when it talks about the armies of the west, the only armies that were ever to the west of Israel were the Philistines. But at the time that Zechariah wrote this, there was no more Philistia. Babylon had destroyed it and consumed it. There was no land of the Philistines at that time. It became lost in the Seleucid Empire of the Seleucus, one of the four generals of Alexander the Great. When he died, he split up his kingdom into four parts. And so there was no enemy to bring back survivors to Jerusalem from on the west, only on the east. Babylon is north and east. Assyria is north and east. Persia was north and east, not west. The only thing to the west, the only enemy to the west was Philistia, the Philistine. And they were no more when Zechariah wrote this. So how are their enemies going to come from the west there? Because there's nothing west of them right now except the Mediterranean Ocean and that little strip that really belongs to Israel, but they gave it to the Palestinians, the so-called Palestinians, which I'll show you in a minute, are the modern Philistines. And of course, this has got to be future because it says they'll dwell in Jerusalem and be my people. I'll be their God. That's all true. That was true then. That's true now. But it says that they will be there in truth and in righteousness. In verse 8, they are not there in truth and in righteousness. They are there in unbelief. Israel is a secular nation now. You have a small minority who actually believe in God and practice Orthodox Judaism. And the rest of them are secular people, but very few believe in the Lord Jesus Christ as their Messiah, Yeshua Mashiach. Some do, not many. So this is all in the future. I want you to think about, he says it's going to be marvelous. It's going to be marvelous. If it be marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of this people in these days, should it also be marvelous in mine eyes? That means it'll be hard. It'll be difficult. It'll be mysterious. It'll be hard to understand. It'll be hard to come about. Remember, Jesus said, this is the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes, which means I just can't believe that he did it, that it's so hard that I couldn't believe it was done. I want to talk about what I believe Zechariah is talking about, because I believe it is a modern prophecy that's being fulfilled right now. Because it hadn't been fulfilled before now. It was not fulfilled in Zechariah's day. Soon, the Persian Empire fell to the Greeks, and what was on the west coast, what had been the area of the Philistines, came under Greek control, Hellenistic influence, under the Seleucid Empire, and later the Romans. So this hasn't happened yet in this complete picture that Zechariah paints of Israel being at peace in Jerusalem, and God being their people, God being their God, and they being God's people. And they're in the land, in the capital of Jerusalem, in Zion, in truth and in righteousness. That hasn't happened yet. Let's look at it again. Verse 6, thus saith the Lord of hosts. I've explained the components of this. Now, listen to it all strung together before I start explaining the prophecy I believe is being fulfilled now in these verses. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, if it be marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of this people in these days, should it also be marvelous in mine eyes, saith the Lord of hosts? Thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will save my people from the east country and from the west country. And I will bring them, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. And they shall be my people, and I will be their God in truth and in righteousness. And we know that hasn't happened yet. Even when it comes to verse 12, when this is a clarification of these verses in the same chapter 8 of Zechariah, for the seed shall be prosperous. It also could be meaning that the seed is at peace. The seed is not at peace right now. The seed has seldom been at peace. And it's certainly not at peace now, because you got all of the Iranian-backed terror groups and countries and militias trying to destroy Israel. And soon Israel will destroy Iran, and that really will open up a can of worms. But it's coming, Bubba. Iran, if they antagonize Israel to a certain point, they're going to wish that they had never drawn a breath. They'd have wished they'd never been born. Because Israel has the capability of turning Iran into glass, and they can do it. And who's going to stop them? Nobody. Now, for the seed shall be prosperous, at peace. It hasn't happened. It's not going on yet. The vine shall give her fruit, the ground shall give her increase. That has, in part. The heavens shall give their due. I mean, Israel is a garden. It was a swamp, a wilderness, a marsh in places. You think of it as a desert, but wherever the river was, the land was bad because it was just all swampy and messed up. A land of mosquitoes and chiggers and scorpions. And there was a way that Mark Twain described it in the late 1800s, but the return of God's people to Israel had turned it into a garden. Desalination, irrigation, industry, ingenuity, and then the hand of God made it grow and gave them the increase. And I will cause the remnant of this people to possess all these things. So there will be a remnant. And so let's talk about this enemy that God is going to deliver them from, this enemy from the west country. If we go back to Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 7, I think. I made some notes here. And And let's just take this one verse, and then I'm going to try to bring it into context and talk about a couple of things. Verse 7 of Zephaniah, it's back 2 books to your left. Verse 7, chapter 2 of Zephaniah. And the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. The coast. In verse 5 it says the sea coast. The coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. The coast. It's talking about the coast on the Mediterranean Sea when they divided up the land. It says, and then the coast turneth to Ramah, to the strong city of Tyre, who were Tyre and Sidon in modern day Lebanon. And the coast turneth to Hosa, and the outgoings thereof are at the sea, from the coast to Achav. And this is the inheritance of the tribe of Asher. They were given that sea coast. They never took it all, because the Philistines were powerful, and they took most of that sea coast, except for a little space between on the coast of Israel, a little space of Israel. Like here's Philistia, and then here's Israel, and it notches in like this, and they have a coast where Caesarea Philippi is now, and then above that, Tyre and Sidon, modern day Lebanon on the coast, and of course Israel moving back to the east from the coast. That was what God gave to Asher, but they were never able to conquer it. They were never able to take all the Canaanites and get them out of the land, weren't able to destroy them completely. So in verse 7 it says, the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. Well, it was given to Asher. This is talking about in the future of the land of Judah and Israel that would become one people in the millennial kingdom. They would just be one. It would be Israel. And the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah, and they shall feed thereupon. In the house of Ashkelon shall they lie down in evening, for the Lord their God shall visit them and turn away their captivity. And Ashkelon was one of the cities that took heavy missile strikes from Iranian-backed Houthi rebels from Yemen on October 7th, 2023. Destroyed much of the city. It didn't make a lot of headlines because of the invasion of Hamas when they came in and killed 1,400 innocent Jews, took many captives, and went back to Gaza in the dawn and pre-dawn hours, and then all day long fighting on October 7th, 2023. That was their 9/11. Did you know that? You have to look at it this way. We lost about 3,000 people on 9/11. But we're a lot larger country than Israel. If you scale their losses on the October 7th invasion by Hamas of Israel. It would be more like if you scaled it up to our population, it'd be like them losing 30 or 40,000 people, mostly women and children and old folks. You know, you got to be a murderous bunch of cowards and real low lives to pick on women and children and old people. You're really brave, aren't you? You got a really brave God, don't you? And you have no idea, Gaza, Hamas, you have no idea you're worshiping Satan, the devil. You've been deluded by your gods and by the angelic evil entities behind those gods. Ashkelon, the houses of Ashkelon, shall lie down in the evening. Well, they were in violence before. Ashkelon was one of the cities that Hamas invaded or attacked. Not only did it disrupt energy and military complexes, it also destroyed roads and stuff that the Israeli Defense Forces needed to move people to the area, to move troops to the area where the most intense fighting was going on October the 7th. Now, Israel was at fault in a bunch of things. Their intelligence was bad. They had some good intelligence they neglected. They had gotten lazy in their vigilance and they let this attack happen. They should have been able to stop it, but they ignored warnings. So anybody who calls me, says that I'm just everything Israel does that I think's fine, well, that's not true. They made some bad mistakes, got a lot of people killed. Now I want to read this whole package and see how much familiar stuff. And this mentions Gaza, and Gaza is just where it is today, except it was longer. In the ancient times, the Gaza Strip, it went all the way from the Egyptian border along the Mediterranean coast, past where modern day Ashkelon is, almost to the coast, almost to the border of Lebanon, but not quite, because there was an access to the Mediterranean for Israel. So, verse 4. Well, I tell you what we will do is we will pick up in verse 1 of chapter 2 to give you the entire context. Gather yourselves together, yea, gather together, O nation not desired. Before the decree bring forth, before the day passes the shaft, before the fierce anger of the Lord come upon you, before the day of the Lord's anger come upon you. Gather yourselves together. Seek ye the Lord, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness. Seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. This applies to anybody, not just Christians, not just Jews. If you seek the Lord and you seek meekness and you seek righteousness, he will take note. It even happened with wicked King Ahab. Elijah told Ahab that God was going to destroy him and all his seed, and he wouldn't have any man on the throne of Israel there in the kingdom of Samaria. And it scared old Ahab. He went along, took off his robes, his kingly robes, and he went around the house. It said he walked softly in sackcloth and ashes. He humbled himself. And God told Elijah, good morning, Charlie. God told Elijah, he said, you see how Ahab humbles himself? This is in chapter 21, I think, of First Kings. You see how he humbles himself. I'm going to do all those things to Ahab that I said I was going to do. I'm going to take the kingdom, but I'm not going to do it while he's alive. I'm going to wait till he's dead, because he humbled himself before me. You see, a little humility lessened the judgment upon an awful man. Seeking a little meekness, a little humility, a denial of self went a long ways toward God saying, well, and actually he reduced his sentence. He lessened his punishment. I won't do it to him while he's alive. I'll wait. And he did. Of course, he didn't have to wait long, because a couple of years later, Ahab died at Ramoth Gilead. That's in 1 Kings chapter 22. You can read all about it. Verse 4, chapter 2 of Zephaniah. For Gaza shall be forsaken, and Ashkelon in desolation. Ashkelon was part of the attack of October 7. It used to be in Gaza. It used to be part of the Philistia. Gaza is where it's always been. It's in the land of the Philistines. And it says, Ashkelon shall be a desolation, and they shall drive out Ashdod at the noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Ekron were all cities of the Philistines, but they're all part of modern Israel. And that is where much of the activity on October 7th, 2023 took place. And it says, they shall drive out Ashdod at noonday. Well, it was noon before the Israeli Defense Forces got there to help. Remember, they were like old retired people and Army reservists with a pistol here and a rifle there, trying to fight all those terrorists and Hamas guerrillas. Remember seeing that on the news, where you had a couple of old men exchanging fire with an army of Hamas militia backed by Iran, firing Russian-made weapons and Chinese-made weapons. You see how this is tied together? It's all the people who hate God. It says that for Gaza shall be forsaken. It isn't yet, it's almost. And Ashkelon in desolation, it got blasted pretty well. And they shall drive out Ashdod at noonday, and Ekron shall be rooted up. Those were both central battle points on October the 7th, 2023. In verse 5, it says, woe to the inhabitants of the seacoast. Who inhabited the seacoast? The Philistines. Who inhabits the seacoast now? Gaza, Hamas. You know, Hamas was instituted in 2004. Do you know what Hamas means in Hebrew? It's a word that translated in Hebrew that means violence. Hamas means violence. Can you dig that? They named themselves violence. Woe unto the inhabitants of the seacoast, the nation of the Kerethites. Who are the Kerethites? The Kerethites were like special ops troops under David and his mighty men. Whenever they had a dirty job to do, he sent the Kerethites and the Pelethites. They were like the Green Berets and the Rangers and the Navy SEALs. They went and they did covert operations. They blew up bridges. They assassinated kings. They did whatever the king of Israel wanted. David used them many times against his enemies. He sent in the Pelethites and the Kerethites. You can read about these things in 1 Kings and in 1 Chronicles and in the book of 2 Samuel. David used the Kerethites and the Pelethites. Woe unto the inhabitants of the seacoast. That's Hamas, ancient Philistine. Philistia and Gaza and Hamas, it's all the same thing. Hamas is spiritually the Philistines, because the same God of this world who empowered and emboldened the Philistines, that old dragon, Satan, the devil, is the god of Hamas. There is no difference. Hamas is the Philistines. Gaza is Philistia. It is the old hatred. They have come back to war for the old hatred. It is the work of the devil. It is the work of that old dragon, the devil and Satan, who deceiveth the whole world, who accuseth the brethren night and day. The God of this world is empowering Hamas. They're the modern day Kerethites and Pelethites. They were sent in. The assassins came in to kill 1,400 Jews. Young people, women and children, old people. They didn't have the guts to fight men. Now men have gone in to fight them, and they're going to lose. Because cowards always lose. Is it the will of God? I don't know. But I know one thing, that these modern day Philistines, they probably wish they had never invaded and fought in Ashdod and Ekron and Ashkelon, which all belong to Judah now, or to Israel. Woe unto the inhabitants of the seacoast, the nation of the Kerethites, of the Pelethites. Translate that as the nation of assassins. So all these people are assassins. They're murderers, highwaymen, thieves, pirates. You don't treat with pirates. You hang them. You make them walk the plank. You do not negotiate with pirates. You send them to the bottom of the sea. You send them to you send them to Davy Jones's locker. You put in the TNT bundles and you blow them to hell. That's what you do. That is what you do. And there's nothing left but blood and fire and the smell of cordite. So all these people understand. The word, woe unto the nation of the seacoast, the Philistines, Hamas, the nation of the Kerethites, the assassins, the roaming assassins, the special op murderers. The word of the Lord is against you, O Canaan. What was Philistia? The ancient Canaanites. And the Canaanite was in the land. We find out in Genesis chapter 13, and the Canaanite was in the land. O Canaan, the land of the Philistines. Verse 5, chapter 2, Zephaniah. O Canaan, land of the Philistines, I will even destroy thee, and there shall be no inhabitant. And the seacoast shall be dwellings and cottages for shepherds and folds for flocks. And the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. And they shall feed thereupon. The houses of Ashkelon shall lie down in the evening. For the Lord their God shall visit them and turn away their captivity. They're captive to terror right now because they're right on the front lines and they get bombed and missiles go in and get shelled every day. Hamas means violence. Gaza is Philistia. Hamas are the Philistines. The ancient enemy of Israel. And they are fighting because of the old hatred. They're fighting because the devil tells them to kill Jews. It's the same thing that runs every anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic strain known to man, from Haman, wicked Haman, all the way to Caesar, to the pogroms of the 1800s and early 1900s in Russia and Ukraine and Eastern Europe, the Spanish Inquisition, the running of the Jews out of Spain, Hitler killing 6 million Jews at least. He killed a third of the Jews on earth. By the end of the tribulation, 2/3 of all the Jews on earth will be dead. And God will preserve a third of them, a remnant supernaturally. And they will be the beginning of the mortals in the new millennium, the new kingdom, the millennial kingdom of the Lord Jesus Christ on earth. You see, all this is real. It all fits together. The Bible fits together with mathematical precision. I just read you a prophecy that was written 2,700 years ago during the days of Zephaniah. That was written, and then it was fulfilled a year ago in southwestern Israel. Now, what do you think about that? There is nothing in that prophecy that didn't happen on October 7th, 2023. It's continuing on right now. But there's nothing there that hasn't happened so far. It has been fulfilled in every point, except God's people living in Jerusalem in peace, in meekness, in truth, in righteousness, and judgment. That hasn't happened yet, but the rest of it just happened a year ago. So how long will it take for the rest of it to come about? Remember, in the millennial kingdom, Jesus, the King of the Jews, is going to sit on a Jewish throne in Jerusalem, the throne of his father David. He will rule them with a rod of iron, and the law will go forth from Jerusalem. And his kingdom on the earth will last for 1,000 years, and we will rule with him as kings and priests in that kingdom. And it will be a mortal kingdom of a restored land, a reboot of Eden, where the lamb will lay down with the lion and the bear will eat straw like an ox. And that there'll be so many old people. And then if somebody dies at 100 years old, they'll say he was just a child. And there'll be children playing in the streets and laughing and having fun. And they're not going to be worried about some missile coming in and pounding them to death. They're not going to have to worry about some shelling from howitzers coming from the battle line to the south or to the north. I could mention Hezbollah and the Syrian militias. I could mention all that, but today's text had to do only with Hamas. Hamas means violence. Hamas is Philistia. The Gazans, the Palestinians, are the Philistines. If not in bloodline, in spirit, because they're powered by their father, the devil. And their only goal in life is to destroy anything that has to do with the people of God. And that is Israel. Now, there will be many people who think that what I'm saying is stupid. You have a right to be wrong. This is America. You don't have to believe the truth. You can believe anything you want to. You can believe in the Easter Bunny. You can believe that Alan Ladd was 6 foot tall. You can believe that the Monkees were a good band. You can believe anything you want to. You have that right. But I have told you the truth. Read it for yourselves. The book of Zephaniah, verses 1 through 7, is a prophecy of the current war going on between Israel and Hamas. And their very name means violence. Hamas, defined, means violence. If it's used in a little bit different way, it means blood in the streets. Isn't that poetic? Well, blood in the streets may be fitting because in Revelation, at the Battle of Armageddon, it says that the blood is going to flow as high as a horse's bridles. We're getting closer to that every day. So we will pick up tomorrow. I had a prophecy there, and I'm not seeing too good still. So I'm not going to try to go further, but we've been together for 40 minutes or so, and I believe I've explained the prophecy about the Philistines. And now you know who the Philistines are today, and you know what God's going to do to them. You know, you don't touch Israel and get away with it. Behold, he that keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Did I say that right? You know, sometimes I get the phrases right and I get them in the wrong order. That ever happened to you? I said it right. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. He knows what's going on. God will take action. He doesn't need your help, but he appreciates your prayers, and for your own well-being, you need to pray for Jerusalem, because that is a biblical directive. We are commanded to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. You should never lay your head down on the pillow at night without praying for the peace of Jerusalem. It's an order. God bless you.